everybody, and welcome to our September PaceCast. I'm Anita Pace. Thank you for joining us. We're recording this in the middle of August, and I'm pleased to say it's one of those rare occasions where it's a bright, sunny day. So hopefully when you're listening to this in September, we'll have had a few of these bright, sunny days, and we will have, in fact, had a summer. So on that bright note, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by Jo Barnes. And Jo is the Managing Director of Sewell Estates. And I'm looking forward to learning more about Jo's life and her career to date and what she hopes for in the future. So welcome for joining us. Welcome to the PaceCast. And thank you for joining us, Jo.
Thanks, Anita. Nice to see you.
So, as always, we've asked our guest to bring in something that's meaningful to them. And as always, I don't know what she's brought in. So I'm looking forward to hearing what it is and why it's so important to her.
Well, the first thing I brought in is a little pot of Nivea cream, which is a very old-fashioned thing now, but reminds me very much of my mum and where I grew up as well in the 80s, where this was the face cream of choice for all the mums. And the smell, if you ever smell this stuff, it's really evocative of that time as well. So I love it. And I do actually still use it, you know, like on elbows and things.
Yes.
It's not, I've upgraded my facial care since I used to use Nivea. But it reminds me a lot of my mum and obviously of home and mum and dad. And really the reason I brought it in relevance to today's conversation is because they really instilled in me a work ethic. They both worked really hard. They both had quite manual jobs, and often mum would come home and fall asleep on the sofa before she could do anything else. But she was a cleaner, my dad was a postman. And actually, I think that work ethic, which hopefully I've passed on to my kids as well, is really important. And that resilience that even though, you know, days might not be great and you're working hard, actually getting up every morning and turning up and showing up and doing your job and providing for your family is a really important thing to do. So that's my first object.
Okay, thank you for that.
And I've broken the rules because I brought a second object. Now, I really struggled with this because I could have brought any book off my bookshelf because I am an avid reader and have always been a bookworm. And I think the reason I thought it might be relevant is that today's book in Reading Corner is Donut Economics, and this is the latest book I'm reading.
Okay,
but I read
riveting, I bet.
I know it is though. So I did economics at university, and I'm not a natural academic. I saw reading and learning as a way out of, and this sounds dreadful, I love my hometown. I was brought up in a town called Colne in Lancashire, but there was no opportunities there in the 80s. And I decided I was good at school and I was a bookworm. You know, every Christmas I used to get a £5 book token and I'd spend hours in W.H. Smith's in Burnley trying to spend this £5. But it was my way to get on, really. I could see it was a way out and a way to move on with my life and have other choices, create opportunities for myself. My dad, when I told him I wanted to go to university, I won't tell you exactly what he said because it had a swear word in it, but said, "What for? What do you want to do? What do you want to do that for? Why would you want to go to university?" And, you know, in a typical teenage strop, I told him I just was. And bless him then, he worked extra shifts to make sure that he could afford for me to support me. But
and
of course,
do you have siblings?
I have two others. But of course, the problem is, and he didn't know because he'd never been to university and we didn't understand the grant system. The grant was just, it was the last year of grants before they started bringing in loans. And he didn't realise that him working overtime would mean that I wouldn't get a full grant.
Oh, bless him.
So he worked his arse off.
Yeah.
And then that first year, I didn't get a full grant. I was at university with kids from families that had businesses and they were all on full grants. And my dad, who was the postman, and my mum, who was the cleaner, I was on half grant. So I had to get a job because my dad had worked really hard.
Oh.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? But anyway, I don't think the system's changed that much, actually, since then. Yeah, so reading was always a big thing for me, and it still is.
And you say you studied economics at university.
Yeah.
So did you know, clearly you're ambitious and you had that drive and self-motivation to try and, as you said earlier, get out of the town and do something. So did you have an idea at that age what it was you wanted to do?
Well, actually, when I was going to university, I thought at first I wanted to do English. I wanted to be a journalist. And I kind of went off that because I had a really inspiring economics teacher when I was doing A-levels, a guy called Mike Smith, who used to bring in the newspapers, the broadsheets, And he taught us how to read them and understand what was going on in them. So it was more that I'm very interested in current affairs and I'm very interested in how things work. I'm not interested at all in economics, theoretical economics. It's all about the application.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so Mike really inspired me to sort of open my eyes a little bit. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I might try that. I'll probably get a better job if I do economics than English, because I don't want to teach, because I didn't like children particularly.
It's surprising how many teachers don't like children.
Yeah, well, I suppose, yeah. So I thought, well, I'll do economics. So yeah, it wasn't that I had a big career plan. I sort of wanted to be a journalist, finished my university degree, applied for loads of jobs. I came out in a recession in 93.
And where was university? Sorry?
Newcastle. So it was the old Polytechnic. It's Northumbria University now, but it's switched in my final year, I think, to Northumbria. So it was the old Poly. So I didn't get great grades at A level. I did okay. I discovered going out and boyfriends and everything. So I did enough.
Yeah.
Got to university and did enough. But like I say, I had a full-time job practically the whole time I was there as well, on top of partying and studying. So.
And what was the job?
I was a waitress.
Right.
I loved waitressing.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. And I used to work in a restaurant which isn't there anymore, down on the on Dean Street, going down to the quayside. It's actually a punk bar now. It used to be called Wings Restaurant, and it was brilliant. It was just a revelation.
Was it Chinese by any chance?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't. It was part of a group that had a hotel upstairs, Surtees Hotel, and it had a nightclub called the Key Club underneath, and it had a bar, and then there was Wings Restaurant, and it was owned by a local entrepreneur a guy called Brian, and he was, well, just from the way he ran that business, which was very interesting. I'm not sure was always entirely legitimate, but it was interesting. It was an interesting education. But I loved working. I worked with students, but I also worked with a lot of people for whom that was their proper job, if you like. That was their full-time job. So I got exposed to an awful lot more of the city through that, really. I saw a lot of sides of the city that I probably wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love Newcastle. And my son's actually just finished university there.
Oh, he's gone there as well. Yeah, okay. So you graduated, and then tell us about the next part of your journey. So where did you go from there?
So I was offered a job when I was waitressing in Scotland. I wanted to move to Scotland after university. I'd met my husband through another friend.
At uni?
At uni. He was in Dundee, but I went to visit my friend in Dundee. A friend from home, and one of his flatmates was Richard, my husband. Well, he wasn't my husband then, obviously, but he is now. And so after I graduated, he was on a 4-year degree, so we're the same age, but he had another year. And then after he did that, he did his professional qualifications because he was doing law, so he did that for a year. So he was going to be there for a bit longer. So I decided I was going to Scotland after graduation.
And what was it about Scotland that appealed to you?
Well, just him.
Oh, right, okay. Okay.
There's nothing else, really.
Love at first sight.
And there was no other jobs, really, in all honesty. I mean, I applied for loads of jobs and got nowhere. Although, thinking back, I probably didn't do the applications in the right way because we had nobody to show us how to do a targeted application. So it was quite frustrating. I'd looked at doing a journalism course with Thomson Group after graduation, but I couldn't afford to do it because you had to pay for your own training.
Right.
Which I have a big problem with that now. We have internships in the Sewell Group and, whatever their background, and we have to be, I really struggle with people from privileged backgrounds being able to afford to do internships, whereas kids from working class backgrounds maybe can't because they have to work, they have to earn money. So we always pay people properly. We always pay people properly.
Yeah.
And it's... And we're getting loads of internships now and lots of work experience, and we always pay.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not the school kids that come to do a week, but anybody that comes to do a summer or a month of work experience or whatever they do in between university courses or after or college courses. If they're not an apprentice, obviously if they're on apprentice programs, they get the apprentice pay and everything like that, and all the support we give them.
So I'm just interested then. We'll just go off topic slightly. So how many work experience opportunities, internships do you offer then at Sewell Group?
Well,
a year, would you say?
Well, 15% of our workforce is our target for people in gateway roles. So that's graduates, apprentices, traineeships and work experience.
Wow, okay.
So it'd be hard to put a number on it.
Yeah,
but
that's quite a high percentage then.
Yeah, our workforce today is what is it today? 290 people, say. 286, 287 in the estate side of the group.
Estates, right.
On the retail side of the group, which is obviously it's a different part of the business, but on the retail side of the business, we have 220, 230 staff. So we have about 500 people in the group as a whole. Right. But the estate side, which is where people come for internships, you know, that's where they'll often come for internships. We'll take as many as we can get, quite frankly.
Really?
A lot of people end up then coming back after university and apply for our graduate training programs. And, you know, they're tried and tested.
Yeah.
So I can think of 3 in one of our consultancy practices that have started in the last 4 or 5 years, and all of them all of them had come for work experience whilst at university.
Yeah. Well, the fact you're remunerating the opportunities as well, you're going to be inundated now. People are going to hear this.
Well, do you know what? That's great. I'd love to be able to, it's always the problem, isn't it, that people often don't know what's on their doorstep. And
exactly.
We still have that issue of not attracting too many people from across the country. We have a few now starting to come through, particularly because one of our businesses, we're hiring computer programmers. So people are coming from all over for that. But there aren't many courses locally in the built environment. So most of our trainees and graduates come from, Northumbria is a big hunting ground. Newcastle is a hunting ground because of Northumbria University. Yeah. They do a lot of surveying courses, Sheffield, Leeds.
Which is ironic based on, bearing in mind where you went to uni.
Yeah.
So we'll pick up on Sewell Group, Sewell Estates a bit later, but I just want to go back to you. And so you're in Scotland. Yeah. You're with Rich.
Yeah.
Happily.
Yeah.
So what did you end up doing then?
So I ended up working in a graduate retail thing, because this guy that was a regional manager offered me a job and said, if you want to move to Scotland, I'll give you a job, because he'd seen me working in the restaurant. So I took
And where in Scotland were you?
I was in Dundee.
In Dundee.
But I said to him, I'm not interested in retail. I'd worked in retail as a kid, and I really wasn't interested. He said, don't worry, if it gets you up there, gives you some work experience while you're looking for your dream job, you see. Now, my dream job, because when I was at university, I had a fantastic, again, inspired by a teacher, a guy called Ian Stone, who was one of my lecturers, and he lectured in urban economics. So that's when I really understood how you could impact on changing places.
Right, okay.
So, and our responsibilities as society and in helping people to be beneficiaries of that. So not just changing a place, but making sure that you're creating opportunities, jobs, business opportunities, that kind of thing. So I was desperate to get into urban economics. Very few jobs.
I was going to say, it's quite niche, that. It's not something that people...
So I was trawling all over the country. I was happy to move if I needed to move. And I actually found a job at Fife Council, which is the neighbouring authority to Dundee. So you cross over the Tay Bridge and you're in Fife. And it was for Fife Council as an economic development assistant. So it was exactly what I wanted.
Yep.
And I had the most marvellous 2 years there. It was fantastic. I worked in an area of Fife that was known as Leavenmouth, which was a few hard-pressed towns that were sort of strung along the coast, just up from Edinburgh, that had high rates of unemployment, had high rates of drug abuse. There was a lot of cheap heroin imports into Edinburgh and into Scotland in the 80s. So we had a lot of intergenerational problems with substance abuse. So trying to get those younger people motivated was tough, but I got to do, because it was a small team, I got to do loads of stuff. So I was working on getting young people into work. I was working with small businesses to help them start up. I was working on derelict land reclamation. We had old steelworks and things like that, where we had to sort out poisoned land and get government money to do it. So it was a real education. It was fantastic. And we had some funny times as well. I remember I'd helped I can't remember if it was prawns or langoustines, but anyway, some fisherman, this guy needed to repair his boat, and it was his livelihood. And he came into the office and asked we had grants that we used to give people. So I gave him this grant. And then I was out and about doing some of my site visits and things. And I came into the office and the receptionist said, "Oh, I'm glad you're back." I can't do a Scottish accent now. I could then. I'm glad you're back because I've got something for you. And she went into the staff kitchen and hauled out 2 massive carrier bags of these prawns in their shells.
Nice.
And my mother-in-law actually lived about 10 miles away, and I didn't know what to do with these. And I lived in effectively a student house, you know, so I had a tiny little ice box in my fridge. I thought, well, what am I going to do with all these prawns? So I went to my mother-in-law's house, Anne's house, and we sat there shelling and washing and freezing these prawns for the rest of the night. And she's like, why did he give you these? And I don't know. But people just used to randomly turn up. I mean, now you probably couldn't accept the gifts, but nobody's, you know, we didn't, it was one of those things that, well, how do you turn away this guy? He didn't even ask really if he could, he just dumped them on the reception. They're there for Joe.
Oh, he obviously appreciated the help you gave him, though. And you dined on prawn curry for the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly. We had a lot of frozen prawns.
So clearly that was a good foundation for your career and what you learned in economic development and urban economics. So how did you go from Fife Council to East Yorkshire? Was that the next step?
No, next step was Lancashire.
Right, back to Lancashire.
I went back to Lancashire because I didn't really want to go back to my hometown. I ended up living I bought a house in my hometown. But
after you'd escaped? I'd
escaped, but then I'd gone back for a good job, you see, right. So that was probably different.
With Rich in tow?
Yes, it was his turn to move.
Yeah. And you were married by this point because you mentioned your mother-in-law. So.
We weren't married just then.
Okay.
She was to be my mother-in-law. We were married just as we were leaving Lancashire. Actually, we got married. But he'd gone to Cambridge. So he decided he didn't want to practice law, and he did his masters at Cambridge University, which was amazing because Richard's background. He's from a council estate in Glenrothes. His mum and dad were very similar to mine in terms of their careers and jobs that they had. They were jobs, really, not careers. And but he's a very bright guy. And he had a very inspiring lecturer, a guy called Ian, who we're still friends with today, who said to him, why are you messing about at this? Your brain, you shouldn't be working in practice. You should be a professor. You know, you should be following that track to get a chair. So he sent him down the academic route, which actually he's absolutely loved and he's still in. So he was doing bits of teaching, and he'd just got his PhD at Hull. So for 2 years, we basically commuted between Hull and Lancashire. I had a job as the town centres officer in Pendle Council, which again was fantastic. I had 5 towns to look after. I absolutely adored it. Brought loads of different festivals and events and activities, and I used to go out and do industrial grants for. Where I had to sign the Official Secrets Act because we had a lot of manufacturing companies around our area that worked in the nuclear industry or in defence. So there was all sorts of really exciting stuff. Loved it. Great team of people. But then it was my turn to move.
Yeah.
Because his PhD turned into a lectureship, and I came across to work. I got a job at Hull City Vision, which I was working on the River Hull Corridor Regeneration Programme, and that was in 1999. It was the year we got married as well. So I moved across as a Mrs. To Hull. So that was that.
And then you're still here 20 years later.
And I said, I'll move across for a couple of years. Yeah. I'm not sure about this place, really. Honestly, I didn't really like it, which is, I can't quite believe that. But I've said before, but people, once they're here, they get kind of
sucked in. Yeah.
You realise what a great place it is. But I didn't find the people very friendly.
Oh, that's surprising because a lot of people say that that's one of the things they do like about the area.
I know. Well, after I'd been here 12 months, I realised that they were very friendly, actually. It's just that they were probably, it's that whole thing of strangers coming in and different accents and stuff. But because at that point I had a really weird hybrid of part Geordie, part Scottish, part Lancashire. So
see, I'm not picking up any of that now.
Because I've been here so long, that's why. I came across, did that, worked on the city centre master plan for Hull, helped develop and set up the urban regeneration company for Hull, and left the public sector in 2008 when I left as economic development director for Hull City Build. And I absolutely adored working on the city centre regeneration. It was brilliant. But I was ready for a change.
Yeah,
I was ready to do something different. I think I'd been doing what I'd been doing for 14 years or so, and an opportunity came up to work with the Sewell Group. I'd sort of knew Paul a little bit from he sat on our board as a private sector
Yeah,
representative at City Build.
And he's quite a big figure in certainly
He
that
is,
time
but he
in
was
Hull.
terrifying. I mean, he was absolutely terrifying. Yeah, I used to have to go and do, but I've told him this, he knows this, but I used to have to go and do board presentations to the board at City Build. And I used to dread it because he was awful. He was really hard. You know, whatever you said, it wasn't right. And afterwards, when I've challenged him on that a few times, he said, well, you know, I just wanted to make sure you were as good as I thought you were. I was just testing you. It's like, right, okay.
Yeah.
It just made, because when he offered me a role, I said, are you sure? Because all I'd been getting for several years was a load of grief.
Yeah,
you know,
criticism.
But,
Yeah.
But yeah. So I came across to Sewell Group to run something called Hull City Care, which was one of our public-private partnerships. So it was a segue, really, because what they needed was somebody that understood the public sector, and I didn't know anything about the NHS, but I knew about local government and about central government. But I knew about property development because I've been doing that for a lot of years from the public sector side of things. So I came across and soon got under the skin of it. It was interesting because Paul had said to me, "You'll find it very different to the public sector. The pace is much faster." Well, he's right in terms of decision making, definitely.
Yeah.
He's not right in terms of hard work because I didn't work any differently. I found actually I had a bit more flexibility in the private sector because at that point I had 2 children. So my eldest would have been 6 and my youngest was 4.
And were you working full time with 2 little ones?
Yeah. I came back to work full time after birth.
Yeah.
Richard at that point was he was going up through the ranks at Hull University. I can't remember exactly where he was then. Whether he was a lecturer or a reader or whatever. And he shortly after that became a chair. So that's a professor. He's now at Lincoln and Tromsø University.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's at Lincoln and Tromsø in Norway.
Yeah.
So he's in Tromsø at the minute actually.
Okay.
So yeah, he was sort of on that track, and the flexibility that working. Paul had promised me that it would feel like I was working for myself, and I always wanted to run my own business. I'd met lots of inspiring entrepreneurs on my journey, as you can probably imagine, with some of the people I came into contact with, and actually I really wanted to run my own business. And he said, "Well, this is the next best thing. You know, it's not your own business, but it'll feel like your own business.
It's my business.
Yeah.
You're going to work for me." No, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did that.
I just want to pick up on the point actually, so you were a mum of 2 little ones. So how did you navigate that, working full time and having the 2 children?
Well, I reflect on this a lot with some of our younger women coming up through the business now, and honestly, I haven't got a magic bullet to this. I just feel like I was running for about 10 years, 10, 15 years. I ran everywhere. I'm serious. I had nursery drops, and then I had nursery and school drops. Both ends of the day. It was harder when they were at school. Yeah. It was easy at nursery because you could wait until 6 to pick them up. So you could actually then scoot home, pick them up, get them fed, get them to bed, and then do some more work, and catch up on what you'd missed. But when they were at school, it was hard. At primary school, it was harder because, of course, they kick them out at 3ish, don't they? So you've got to be around.
Halfway through the afternoon. I mean, it's not even the end of the day.
Yeah, and we didn't have any family near us because our family all lives away. We had a very good circle of friends who were in a similar position to us, so we used to pick each other's kids up. I would do a drop off and pick up once a week, but I couldn't commit more than that.
But how did you cope with the mum guilt of the work versus the?
Well, all the time. I don't know if you ever get over it, to be honest. But I read an article when I was in my 30s, which really helped me, and it was, I can't even remember. It was, I'm a Guardian reader, I'll confess now, so it was probably in one of the Guardian or one of the feature pieces that they do. But there was a woman who was talking about mum guilt and how she was a journalist in America, and how she had these really big jobs. She worked covering the White House and all sorts of stuff. And she'd always felt really guilty about it. But she had 2 or 3 big things happen in her life. Her first husband died young. And because of her job, she had her kids in private school. She didn't have to take them out of private school. So the kids weren't disrupted more than they had to be because, of course, their dad had just died. Yeah. She kept the house. Everything was stable. Her second husband, she's a pretty unlucky woman, really, wasn't she? Her second husband went and had an affair. But again, she was self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I actually thought, do you know what? This isn't just about me getting my kicks, because I'm a very competitive person. So it's not about me getting my kicks and having a nice big job and saying, haven't I done well? It's making sure that my family has a stable foundation as well as anything else. And that we don't worry in the way that my family worried about money. You know, money was a big thing for my family. It was a big thing for Richard's family as well. We never had any money. You know, we didn't ask for things because we knew you were just making your parents feel bad.
Yeah.
So we always had, you know, I've got another friend who lives in this area, and she's from Accrington, and she said, "Oh, I was a second-hand Sally." I said, "Well, I wasn't a second-hand Sally, but we're at the all our clothes were from the market."
Yeah.
You know, and the big markets they have in the northwest, and we never had any. You know, and I loved sports, and I had the cheapest, crappiest trainers. You know, and the people that weren't even any good at sport all had like all the labelled stuff. I didn't have any of that. And it's not about what you've got, but that's an easy thing to say when you've got it.
Yeah.
It's hard when you've got nothing.
Yeah.
So I was always, and I still feel that way. You know, I always feel like you never know when if it ends.
Yeah.
You know.
So providing financial security for your family has been
and
a big
choices.
motivator.
Yeah.
And that freedom of choice.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So you're not trapped.
Yeah.
You know. So that's the thing for me.
So how long were you at City Care for then?
So technically, I was the chief exec for quite a few years, but I grew our team, started to grow the team. And in 2012, I decided that I really did want my own business. So just running somebody else's business, although it was, I made an awful lot of, you know, the decisions and all of that.
Yours.
Wasn't mine.
Yeah.
So after a few sort of false starts with City Care at trying to encourage the shareholders in City Care to broaden their scope and for me to have an equity share, it wasn't really possible because it was a public-private partnership. So with their blessing, I started another business, took the small team, there was 5 of us then in City Care, took the small team across to a new business I was starting under a management agreement and sold services back to City Care. So it essentially enabled me to start a business relatively low risk. And the idea was that I started this business called Shared Agenda, and we would then sell estates advisory services, consultancy services to mostly to public bodies actually across the UK to help them decide what to do with their estates, because obviously a property was something I knew a lot about.
Yep.
And I knew a lot about working in the public sector, and I'd had a lot of experience of unlocking complicated situations in terms of new developments or reusing old facilities.
Shared Agenda was your company?
Yes, well, partially. So at that point, I didn't know whether Shared Agenda was going to be a development vehicle as well. So me and Paul hatched a plan on the train back coming from London one time. We'd been to see one of our City Care shareholders. And it was clear to me they weren't going to do anything with us. So I said, look, we're going to have to start our own. And he said, well, that's fine, I'll back you. Because I thought I would end up buying land.
Right. Okay.
And we did buy some land, but it didn't really turn out how we thought. I thought we'd do some property development as well as do the advisory, but we did so much advisory that it became very much about being a consultancy business.
Yeah.
So we still have land assets that we bought, we didn't end up becoming a development vehicle. Actually, the development that we've done is through Sewell Investments, because we have an investments vehicle in the group. That sort of happened over time as well. So I started the business, its first trading year was 2013, and it was hard, you know.
Hard slog.
It is, isn't it? You know, starting a business. I remember coming back from winning one of our first contracts in York, and it was a tiny commission. And I rang a couple of colleagues, including Paul, and I was high-fiving myself in the car driving back saying, I can't believe it, we've just got this commission. And he said, the last time you rang me this excited, you just closed the deal on Wilberforce Health Centre. That was a £16 million job. And I think I rang him about a 15 grand commission. but it was as big to me.
Exactly. And it was so important.
Yeah, it was really important, and it was hard fought. I mean, I think it's my 5th trip to the customer that I actually secured it. So, you know, that resilience thing comes in, doesn't it?
It does.
Anyway, so from small acorns, that team has grown substantially, and I think it's now doing work all over the country, and you know, the team is 5 times the size it was then. We've got 25 people.
So is this now part of Sewell Estates?
Yeah. So then something else happened.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for a good few years,
And just before you move on, how did you find it compared then? So effectively your business, you're running it, you're making the decisions. How did it compare to working for someone else?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was liberating. To be honest, ever since I joined the Sewell Group in 2008, within weeks I felt liberated. So it was a big thing. Having my own business was a big thing, but I'd already felt partially liberated.
Yeah.
And that sounds awful. And I really, we do an awful lot of work with the public sector, and the talent that's in the public sector is phenomenal. And I think it's a shame that they get overlooked a lot of the time, and they get the kind of they don't get the plaudits that they deserve, because they're dealing with some very difficult agendas, if you like, in very difficult circumstances. But I needed a change, and I did feel liberated when I came out of it. So the shared agenda thing, Paul was keen for me to come across and run group.
Yeah.
And the group's got 7 businesses in it now, the estate side of the business.
Including shared agenda.
Agenda. But I wasn't ready. I wanted to make shared agenda a success first.
Yeah.
So I think 2.5 years ago, I took the role of Group MD because I was ready, and I'd got the team ready to take over. Because the thing as well about when you founded a business, customers want you.
Yes.
So you've got to get them to want your team before you can step away, haven't you? Because it's a people business. So that's what we had to do, really, to get to a point where I could step away, knowing that it was in good hands, and it is in good hands. We've got a great team. So since then, in groups, so we've got construction. We have 2 construction companies, Illingworth and Gregory, who are a company out at Elland, a family business that we bought in 2017. We've got Sewell Construction, which has been going 147 years. We have Sewell FM, which has been going probably, 30 plus years now.
Facilities management, not a radio station.
Yeah, not a radio station. Yeah, sorry.
Just clarify that for the listeners.
Talking in jargon. Facilities management business looks after some commercial properties, but an awful lot of health centres, primary schools, that kind of thing. Great team of people. Actually, our biggest single company in terms of headcount.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, with a big base in York as well as in Hull. And then we have our consultancy practices. So we bought one of our, they were our competitor, but they were a very friendly competitor, because they were a competitor that had been very supportive to me over the years. We bought that company, a company called Community Ventures. The old, he's not going to like me saying that when he retires this year. He's not old, but he retires this year, Nigel. The chief exec of that business was a bit of a mentor to me when I set up my business.
Right, okay.
So he ended up creating his own buyer eventually, because we bought him.
But he now works for you?
Well, technically, yes. But I don't think so, really. So we bought that company in 2 goes, actually. We bought him and his colleagues out, and then we bought Galliford Try, who were the majority shareholder, out last year. So that company is now fully embedded in group, and they're brilliant people. Offices in Stockton, Leeds and Nottingham. And then we bought another company called Parallel from they were a mapping service that maps a lot of NHS data and public sector data. And we actually used them as part of our consultancy offer. We bought services from them to help with our consultancy reports. And the outgoing chief exec of that business, the owner of that business, wanted to retire as well. So retirement is, it's interesting, isn't it? And he wanted to make sure he sold his business to a company that he only had 1 employee at that point, but he would leave him in safe hands.
Yes, yeah.
So we bought that business a couple of years ago, and that team's now, I'm going to get this wrong. I think they're at, I want to say 7, but I think they might be at 6.
Right.
But we've given that opportunity to because Ash has now left the business, he's retired, and Claire, one of our up-and-coming leaders in the group, she's running that business.
I know Claire, she used to be marketing manager.
She did.
So she's doing really well.
She's done really well. But, for us in the group, it's all about attitude, flexibility. willing to give things a go and being brave about your choices and having a go at things. I cannot stand ambivalence. Honestly, if there's one thing that's a massive turn off, we're all about energy and passion and
attitude.
And attitude. And she's created her own opportunities.
Yeah, no, she's doing really well. It's really good.
And that business, it's a very small business, but it reminds me a lot of Shared Agenda in that it's got so much potential. In fact, her potential is probably even bigger because it's global.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So I've just put that, now it's on record, so that's the pressure, Claire, if you're listening.
So you've obviously got this, well, firstly, congratulations on your success. I mean, you're doing fantastically well by the sounds of it, and you've got this big role now managing Sewell Estates and all these subsidiaries, if that's the right word, of Sewell Estates. So what does a typical day look like for Jo Barnes when she's at work then?
I don't know if I've really got to, but I do spend a lot of time in board meetings because obviously if one of the downsides of having so many businesses is that you have a lot of boards, and we have some public sector partnership boards as well. So I sit on more than a dozen boards. So I do spend a chunk of my month in board meetings or preparing for board meetings.
And are these all over the country rather than just in the local area?
They're mostly they're all in Yorkshire.
Right.
So they're either at head office in East Hull, or they're in Elland, or in Leeds, depending on which business we're rocking up for that day. I spend a lot of time with our senior leaders. So we have, quite a number of chief executives and MDs now running those businesses, and some key people there that are on their own development journey. So I spend time with them, supporting them, helping them where I need to, give a bit of coaching, informal coaching on the side. And obviously as well, part of my job is to do the performance management bit. Yeah. So I do that too. And I try and do bits of work in between all of that, really. So I have other things that I do for the group. We've got a big scheme out at Headon called Yorkshire Energy Park, and I'm still heavily involved in that scheme. I'm on the Freeport board now as well because that's linked to that scheme. So yeah, I spend a lot of time driving as well, but more than I used to probably. But I tend to try and I've worked out how to make my days really efficient, right, because I don't have time to not be efficient. So if I'm driving over to Elland, I make sure I get my site visits in, I see my top team, and we try and do that around board meetings. And so I might have a busy couple of days over there every month, but they're very much focused on that team. So I try and do that really with whoever I'm going to see. So it just makes more sense.
So if I was going to ask one of your senior leadership team to describe you as what sort of leader is Jo, what do you think they'd say?
Oh, God. That's a really hard question.
I haven't asked them, by the way.
No. Well, hardworking, committed, I would hope they would say energetic, full of enthusiasm and positivity and passion.
I would say so positive all the time.
Yeah, well, I'm not all the time, obviously. We have bad days and good days. I think they would put the yin to the yang with all of that stuff, of course, is that I'm impatient.
Yeah, I am like that.
So, that's I'm not even going to call it a weakness because I think it can be a strength.
Your team maybe don't think that.
No, it can be a weakness, obviously. I want everybody to move at the same pace as I want to move.
Do you get easily frustrated then?
Less so these days. I'm getting old. Less so these days. I used to. But you've got to remember, haven't you, that as the MD of any business, you're on stage.
Yeah.
And it's all right having a hissy fit, but it doesn't do you any favours in terms of your own personal brand. So if I have my hissy fits, they tend to be in private. Yeah. I'm not somebody that will scream and shout. No way.
No, you don't strike me as someone like that.
No, not at all. Not at all in those circumstances. I think it's really disrespectful. Because the other thing I've learned is, you've got to find out what's gone on, and you've got to dig a bit deeper because there's always at least 2 sides and maybe 12 sides to every story. So I've learned to take information, triangulate, and then form an opinion and not be too reactionary because my natural state is to be quite spontaneous.
Yeah.
So I've got to rein that bit in. But I think I would hope that they say those things anyway. So
it sounds like it's going very well. Is there anything that keeps you awake at night?
Oh,
Anything
yeah,
you worry
often.
about?
Yeah.
Can you share any of those with us?
Apart from the menopause, do you mean?
Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, I think I'm pretty much through the worst of that. But anyway, that's another story.
People issues.
Yes. Wouldn't it be easy if you didn't have any staff?
But wouldn't it be boring as well?
Yeah. What would we do all day?
It's never the projects. It's never the businesses and the projects, because whilst they can be very stressful, and particularly when you're coming up to a big deal and everything seems to be going wrong, that is stressful, but it's functional. You can do stuff about that. The thing I sweat over is how to deal with difficult people issues. And that might not be that somebody's not performing. It might be that they're going through a really hard time and I can't think of a way to help them. You know, you want to help them. We're very much, and I know it sounds, everyone says this, don't they? We are a bit of a weird place. We are definitely a work family, and people do pitch in and help each other out in ways that is really inspiring to me, actually. It's the stuff that I'm not even aware of, and I'll go to site and somebody will have had a bereavement and the team's all pitched in, and it's not a bother. It's never an issue. They would always do this for it's that real kind of, they've got the mission clear and they all watch each other's backs, and that is just lovely to see. And it's not something that they're told to do. You know, we hire decent people who just do that. So that's the sort of thing that I love seeing. But yeah, you know, we all go through hard times, don't we? And ups and downs. And I think it can be really hard when you care a lot about your team and about the people that you work with, that you want to help them get through whatever they're going through. And that's always the challenge, I think.
It's hard sometimes, isn't it? Because you've got to divorce the emotion from at the end of the day, it is a business.
Yeah, but you've got to have compassion as well. So we often make decisions too late if somebody's not performing, because we give them a bit of wiggle room because of what's happening in their private life. And, you know, from doing that, we've had far more successes than problems, because I can think of some of our top performers who've had real struggles, and we've given them a bit of flexibility in the period that they've needed, a bit of extra help, and they've come back and paid us back tenfold, you know. So, yeah, you're always going to get the odd person who takes the mickey, but most people don't. Most people.
So what do you enjoy most about your job then? What do you say?
The variety, I think.
I would say you've got a very varied role.
Yeah, the variety. I'm pretty rubbish at sitting still for too long. I actually don't focus properly unless I've got a lot of things going on.
All right, so the busier you are, the better.
Yeah. I perform much better under pressure with a busy work programme. I've got two speeds, I think. I'm either on or I'm asleep.
Yeah.
And so when I go on holiday, it takes me a few days to stop buzzing about the resort and seeing what's going on. And I want to just check, and I'm up and down, and then I'm on a sun lounger for 3 days and don't move, because I've just become comatose.
And can you switch off, do you think?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, and I'm a big believer in fresh air and getting outside. I'm hopeless at gyms. But
you play a bit of tennis, I know.
I do play tennis, yeah. I used to run, but I can't really run very far now because I've got a dodgy foot, but I can still play tennis. Had an operation on my foot last year and it didn't really fix it. But I ran from having my youngest. I ran until I was in my late 40s, which probably caused the dodgy foot.
And running, you mean like road running?
Yeah. Just, and I wasn't any good. I was a cart horse more than a racehorse, but I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it because it cleared my head.
Yeah.
It definitely cleared my head. So I can't really do that anymore. I am going to try and start doing it a bit more.
But you can play tennis.
Can play
your foot's
tennis.
okay to play tennis then?
It is. It hurts afterwards, but it's fine.
Yeah,
I like playing tennis.
And you said earlier you're quite competitive.
I am.
So
yeah,
that's
and I'm in a team now. I'm in a tennis team. Look at that. I'm in a tennis team. I didn't play tennis till I was in my mid-40s.
Oh, right. Okay, so you've only taken it up recently then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought it was
probably early 40s, yeah.
Right.
As a cardio thing.
Yeah.
And then I started playing properly. And this year I joined the tennis club team in my local tennis club. So
you're pretty decent then?
No. No, I'm not. I'm really not. I'm in like the bottom team, and we've not won anything yet, but we are going to win something. I will make sure we're going to win something. We will win something. If it kills me, we'll win something. Yeah.
And is there anything else you do outside of work to unwind, or is it primarily the tennis?
We walk a lot. I'm in a choir.
Oh, did not know that.
I actually started a choir in the Sewell group during City of Culture.
Did you?
They were called the Ransom Notes, and it was the most hilarious choir you've ever. Honestly, it was brilliant.
How many were in the choir?
I think it was about 25 of us.
Paul there?
No. But and we weren't particularly good, but we had a really good time.
Do you know what? When I was at KCOM, we did this choir thing. Can't remember how we did it. We ended up singing at half time at Hull KL match or something. I don't know why we did it, but anyway.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, and I found it so joyful.
It is really
put me in such a good mood.
It is. Singing. It really is.
Yeah.
So I sing every year in the Fit Mums choir because I'm still a Fit Mum even though I don't run. I was one of the early members of Fit Mums in Cottingham, and then obviously Sam's gone on and done some amazing things, and she'd be good to do one of these podcasts.
Yeah, she would actually. I see her sometimes at the track. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, so her story is amazing, but so I'm still a Fit Mum, and they do a choir every year for 3 months. So I've been doing that for I don't know how long we've been doing that now, more than 10 years. Never thought I could sing, to be honest. I was never in the choir at school or anything, and I'm not particularly a good singer, but I can hold a tune. And apparently I'm an alto, so there you go. And we had a really good choir mistress who really gave us a lot of confidence. And we've had several since, because she's moved on, and we've had some fantastic choir masters and mistresses. I don't know if that's what you call them, but that's what we called ours. And it was just really good to be. It was really interesting to discover that. I mean, I've always sung to myself and sung in the car, obviously.
And we all think we're brilliant when we do that, don't we?
But I didn't realise how much I would enjoy it. But it's been really good, and I've literally just joined a few months ago the All for One choir in Hull with a friend of mine who's been desperate, who's a good singer, who's been desperate to join another choir outside of this 3-month hiatus we have every year with Fit Mums, where we do the Fit Mums thing. So I've joined it, so we'll see. But it is a bit mad. If you ever see anything they do, they are a bit crazy, but it's very good fun.
Yeah. So other than being perhaps a better singer, is there anything else you would change about yourself if you could? Maybe your foot.
Yeah, I'd like to have a working foot. A fully functioning foot would be good. I'd like to be a bit more zen sometimes.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. Because, I do have to work on being calm and all of that stuff.
Do you worry a lot then about things, do you think?
I worry about stuff all the time in a small way, you know. It's not particularly distracting. I don't suppose, I'm just used to it. But
professionally, or
I think everything. Okay. I mean, we were talking earlier on about kids, weren't we, and families, and I think you always worry. Whatever they're doing, you're always worried about them, aren't you? I think that my mum said that to me. That. Even long after I'd got married, left home, got married, had children, had good jobs, and I still worry about you.
Still the mum.
Yeah, still a mum, and you've still got. It's hard to break off from because I'm at that transition now with my kids where they are adults now.
In their 20s they'll be now.
21 and 19.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so that's difficult to switch off and realise. I mean, the eldest one's been living away from home for 3 years, but I'm still his mum, So it is hard. That is really hard, and nobody tells you how to do it. No. And it's really hard to get that right and not feel like you're being,
get the balance
too controlling or whatever. You've
Yeah.
got to sort of step back and be a bit more, let go and be a bit more zen about it all.
God, I've got that.
Because they will make mistakes.
Yeah.
I made loads of mistakes. I didn't have anybody mopping up after me. When I made a mistake, I took the brunt of it, whether it was a financial mistake or a work mistake or a relationship mistake. I was just left to my own devices.
So on that subject then, and the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently? Are you quite happy with?
I'm quite happy with where I am, actually. Yeah, I'm quite happy. I think mine are all about people and how you would be different with different people rather than about the career.
Yeah,
I'm quite happy with where I am. I can't really imagine doing anything else now, which is a really weird thing to say, isn't it? But Yeah.
But if you can say that genuinely, then you're in the right place, aren't you? And
Yeah. I am.
place to be.
I say I'm quite happy. I'm very happy with where I am. I just think,
Even though you are in East Yorkshire.
yeah, I kind of like it now.
20 years in.
Yeah. If I didn't like it, I would have gone.
Yeah,
I am
yeah.
that, the spontaneity would have moved me on
Yeah.
if I didn't like it. I absolutely love it.
Well, it's lovely to hear that you are happy, and clearly you're very successful, and congratulations again. And I'm sure your mum and dad are very proud of what you've achieved. And thank you for sharing your story with us. It's been a joy listening to you, and I wish you all the best for future success.
Thanks, Anita. Thank you.
So before you go, I do have one final question for you,
Okay.
and that's been left by our previous guest. She didn't know who she was leaving the question for, so it's quite a general question. And that question is, what motivates you to get out of bed in the morning? Probably rushing to the loo.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've probably picked this up anyway, but I think, and this sounds really trite to say it, but I just think, I love variety, and I love and I'm a positive person, and every day you just don't know. What I've learned is sometimes when you get out of bed in the morning and you think, oh, I've got this to do and that to do, I really don't want to do that, I don't want to go there, I can't be bothered with that. They're the things that you need to do, because that's when the big opportunities come. And it's really weird. And the thing you're looking forward to doing is usually a bit of a non-event. So I always think it's about the challenge of the day ahead. And because I get bored so easily that I need constant stimulation. So I'm thinking, right, what mischief can I cause today? What am I going to do today that's different to yesterday? But again, when you're used to working for as many years as we've worked now, you're just on automatic pilot, aren't you, in all honesty? So you do just throw your legs out of bed and get going, and then you realise once you're moving that actually you're looking forward to the day, but you're not looking forward to the day necessarily when you're just literally waking up, the alarm goes off. But yeah, I mean, it's the variety and the change that you might be able to make, and the opportunities that you might find for you or for somebody else.
Yeah.
So I'm big at matching people up with opportunities as well.
Oh, I love that. That's good. That's brilliant. Thank you. That's a great place to end. So thanks again for your time, Jo. I hope you've enjoyed it. And good luck with making mischief for the rest of the day. Thanks for joining us this month. As always, if you'd like to contact us, please do get in touch via our social media channels. That's it for now, and I look forward to seeing you again next month. Bye-bye.